I'm Harold Williams, the grandson of William Lee Castleberry, and this is an account of his early life as he told it to me while he was a resident of a rest home in Hobart, Oklahoma, after he had reached the age of 90 years old. At this particular time, my granddad wasn't very clear about the last 30 or 40 years of his life, but his early days, something that none of the family had ever heard him expound upon, he was very clear on. And from time to time, as I visited him, we would sit in his room and he would relate to me his early experiences. He was born in Illinois He was born in Illinois in 1858. After he reached the age of about 4 years old, his father joined the Union forces of the Civil War. At the age of approximately 6 to 7 years old, his mother farmed him and his brother Jimmy out to a German couple whom they worked for their keep, and more or less was treated as part of their family because of the fact that their mother was a widow and had 3 other children that I know of, and there possibly might be one more, and she could not take care of them in these times. This German couple seemed as though they worked the boys real hard, and when my grandfather was about 17 years old and his brother Jimmy was about 15, they ran away from this couple and bummed around the eastern part of the United States and finally wound up joining the Union Army. After they received their training and everything, they were shipped to Fort Laramie, Wyoming, out in where the Indians were harassing the western plains of the United States and causing a lot of trouble of people going to Oregon and other places in western United States for settlement. They stayed there for some time and finally decided that they had all of that they wanted. So they left the Army. I laughed and asked him if it was jackrabbit leave, and the old gentleman didn't seem to relish the idea of me calling it that kind of leave. But anyway, according to his story, they got into the mountains, the Rocky Mountains, and where it was inaccessible for people to find them, and beat their way all the way down into Texas, in southern New Mexico, and then over into Texas, and wound up over in Erath County, where he lived for quite a number of years. Now, I don't know just how much time this took, because he told it as though it might have happened in just a very short time, but I'm quite sure it took quite a a long period of time. Because during this period of time, why, he joined a traveling circus. His job was in the circus. He was a barker for the sideshow, and he was also an escape artist. and he was also a prestidigitator. His Barker's squeal was something like, "Ladies and gentlemen, come on up close so that you can hear and see everything that's going on." This show consists of spiritualism, ventriloquism, legerdemain, magic, and other feats consisting of licking red-hot irons, chewing up hot fire coals, and swallowing them as if they were bread, running a bowie knife through the body, and swords. Excuse me, can you raise that? Stop.
No, just back up. Just correct yourself.
Okay. This show consists of spiritualism, ventriloquism, legerdemain, and magic. Doing such stunts as passing bowie knives through the body, swords through the wrist, and making the blood run as freely as the water flows. Doing such stunts as licking red-hot irons, eating hot fire coals, and swallowing them as if they were bread. Now then, so I'm quite sure he actually was an escape artist, and the management of the show offered handsome prizes for anyone who could tie him with a rope and him stay tied. I don't know how much time that he spent doing this. And somewhere along the road, he learned music. And even in that early day, he learned to play an organ, read music as though you were reading a newspaper. He could pick up a songbook and sing the round notes that are popular today as easily as most people could read a newspaper. He could take a strange song that he'd never seen before and just start singing it off and just sing it as though he had known it all along. Now, he also, in this period of time, became an accomplished machinist. Somewhere along about this time, he met Phoebe Burklow in Erath County, and they were married. And he settled down and became a machinist, and he ran and managed cotton gins for a number of years. He actually invented a cleaner for cotton gin that a company in Dallas supposedly, according to his story, stole from him. And because he had taken his model to the show and showed it. And the first thing he was trying to get a patent on it, and the first thing he knew, this gin company had a working model of it. But nevertheless, that didn't deter him. He became a real accomplished machinist and was quite successful in running cotton gins and this sort of thing. In 1904, he left Erath County with his family. He had 2 children, my mother, Rennie Castleberry, and an uncle, Elbert Castleberry, and my grandmother, and came to Dill City, Oklahoma. And they settled approximately 5 miles west and a mile north of Dill City, where he started farming. He brought along with him several letters of recommendation of people who he'd worked for in Texas, and they highly recommended him as a craftsman. And it wasn't long before in this new territory which hadn't become a state yet, his services were quite in demand because this new country, they were plowing it up and planting cotton and building cotton gins and things like this. And in that day and time, there wasn't too many people that really knew, among these early day settlers, that really knew a lot about machinery, and his services became very much in demand. He spent more of his time running cotton gins and thrashing machines and things like that, even though he was supposed to be farming. This pretty well brings him down to the time that he started where he can remember of his later life. I might say this, that he remained a machinist and didn't retire from machine work until he was 80-some years old. Very much in demand by cotton gin companies to repair and troubleshoot these cotton gins and things like that. Now then, from the gist of my story, you probably have discovered that nowhere in it have I said anything about him receiving a discharge from the Army. I told you about him enlisting, but to my knowledge, he never did receive a discharge. So I guess he was AWOL for something like, he died when he was 94, so I guess he's AWOL for something like 75 years. So I wouldn't be a bit surprised about that. It's pretty much of a record of being AWOL. He had a tremendous sense of humor, and he liked to tell stories, and I always enjoyed being around him. He lived with us about after my grandmother died in 1921. He lived with us about 5 years. He taught me how to play cards and play checkers and tell stories and all of this sort of thing. And I grew up very much in awe of him, because here was a man who probably had very little formal education. I don't recall that he ever told me that how much schooling he got, actual schooling he got, but probably not over the 3rd grade. And still at the same time, he could sit down and read a set of blueprints. He could actually draw a set of blueprints if you wanted him to. He could read music. He was a real accomplished organist, and I'm talking about the old-time organ that you used to pump by with your feet while you played it. He could play a violin. He could play a French harp. And he led singing in church. And he was a charter member of the Deal City Baptist Church. He helped organize it. And so I think this, especially as I've grown older, I have really been in awe of his accomplishments. Now then, I think this is for my nieces' benefit and everything, and I hope this kind of gives them an idea of what some of that stock behind them really is, that they just didn't ever say that they were whipped or beat down. They just went ahead and did things. And I hope that rubs off on all of us. That's all.